Welcome back to the Sober Fix podcast, where we flat out refuse to let addiction win. We got another week sober, another episode. Let's get into it, guys. Thank you for your subscriptions. Thank you for the comments, the likes, the support. I appreciate all of it. Let's get into it, guys. What's going on, guys? We're back. Sober Fix podcast. We got Robert, Becoming Well Now, Recovery Guy, 1986, I believe, on Instagram. Robert, good to have you, man. We are missing we're missing Whitney today, but it's okay because she's doing step work, I think it was, with some of her sponsees. So she got off easy on this one. We'll get her on the next one. What's going on, Robert? What's new with you?
Oh, I moving to Florida, it's 80 degrees today, and I was out taking care of my lawn, and I was thinking how fortunate I am and how fortunate we are to be sober in this day and age where things don't seem to make as much sense as they used to, but we're operating from the standpoint of sanity. And so I had a great meeting last night that I went to and woke up today very grateful. Set aside me, in the 11th step it says, God, redirect my thinking, because I always wanted to be about me. And so I was able to make that transition. And today was just a wonderful day. I drove down to Port Orange, about 40 miles from me, and attended a noon meeting. And here I am with you tonight, the Sober Fix podcast, Mr. Drew. So life is good.
Hey, life is good. And I like that you talked about just kind of the world being a little bit different, but when we're operating clear-headed and sober, we don't have to cause a bunch of wreckage over stuff.
Yeah.
Is kind of what I heard from that too. And where are you speaking at next, Robert?
Oh, I'm speaking at the at the Tomoka Group over in Ormond Beach on December 6th, and then February 7th, I'm speaking in Orlando, just south of me, about 70 miles away. I'm speaking at a club there, and then I've got a couple things that I'm doing in March. I have January still open. I'm trying to get some things where I stay closer to home, because I've been to Ohio and Salt Lake City and Vegas, and I don't travel nearly as well as I used to. I like being away from home. And so I want to get things where I can drive in a few hours or in a half hour. So I'm trying to find some speaking engagements. Obviously, I have a great time with you. We've become great friends. I speak. I record twice a week on the Flagler Voice, twice a month rather, and then of course I do my podcast, Recovery Guy Podcast. So. And then I have my meetings and my sponsees, and so life is never boring, that's for sure. And on top of it, Laura's my priority. Laura's my wife, and we've been married over 36 years. And I'm in that mode where I just take care of Laura, and let everything else schedule my time according to what my availability is after I get done taking care of her. Because I found, and this is true, and you found the same thing too. You're in a committed relationship, and if we take care of business at home, business everywhere else seems to be natural. We don't want to go into a meeting and be known as one thing and have our home represent something different. We want to have a level of consistency starting with our home and then branching out from there, not branching from the rooms of AA and then letting AA or NA dictate how our home is. We set our home and let everything else dictate flowing. That's been my experience, and that's what's worked for me. Laura and I've been together 37 years, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And it's like, it's just the transparency. It's consistency. You
Yeah.
get the person that you hear sharing, the recovery stuff, you're really living it. It's going
Yes.
on outside the place. It's not just something that we're talking about. And that's pretty cool. I want to ask you real quick, when you go to these different places and you're speaking in different recovery areas, do you notice much of a difference from one place to the next, or is everything pretty much the same? What do you think?
You know, recovery is the same. The first 164 pages, or if you're in the basic text, whatever your favorite pages are there, recovery is the same. How it's perceived or how people go about it and you bring up a great question. One of the things I found is at a lot of clubs, it's very cliquish because people have a tendency to go to clubs, recovery clubs, and so on. If your meeting is at a church where people are just getting together an hour a week or twice a week for an hour, they don't have a tendency to be as cliquish and as relationship minded. Because if we're too relationship minded, recovery gets set aside. And if we're too recovery minded, fellowship. So we need a blend. We need that. So when I go to clubs, I notice a difference in the clubs when I speak at a larger event at a church or a civic center or something like that. I get a greater cross section of people that I can speak to where I'm more comfortable with. I don't have to take the temperature of the room as much when I'm speaking at an off-site facility as I am in a treatment center or at a Lano club, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And when you're speaking at the treatment center, I mean, you have so many years of sobriety, but I know that you have a way about you where you're able to really connect with people that are even early on. I've heard you speak. I've heard you tell your story at clubs and stuff, and it was just so I don't know, man. It was really good. I remember the first time I heard it, I'm like, wow, it's just so put together and so inspiring. How do you connect still with so many years of sobriety? How do you find a way to connect to those newcomers like you do?
Drew, another good question. I stay accountable. Matter of fact, there's one friend I'm beginning to know. His name is Clint, and I'm going to talk to him because we seem to have been cross paths at a couple meetings. And I always want to stay accountable. I want to make sure that the newcomer still is. I'm talking at a level that the newcomer can understand. And one of the things that I try to do is I try to stay away from specific war stories. I never talk about my religious background, though I have a very defined religious background in my personal approach to a higher power. I don't talk about drugs specifically. I don't talk about alcohol. I don't talk about my divorces. I'm not a war story guy, as you know. I talk on the level of feeling because where you and I can understand is it's not what we lost, it's that feeling of loss. It's not why we despaired, it's that feeling of having been despaired. It's not how we lost our hope, it's a feeling that we were hopeless. And so when we key in on those things, the whole room can relate no matter if you're first 1 or 2 days where you're really raw or decades of sobriety. Somewhere along the line, I'm going to meet you because we bring it down to feeling because you and I were never hopeless. It just felt that way. You know, um, in the doctor's opinion of the big book of Alcoholics, if I may chase this rabbit trail, it says we had so many problems we despaired over solving any of them. Now finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only requirement necessary is to follow a few simple rules. And so I talk about the rules, I talk about the steps, which everyone wants to ascribe to as we go through our journey. The first thing we have to do is understand our powerlessness over that drug or that substance or that behavior, and that our life had become unmanageable. So I talk in general sense what it feels like to be powerless, to stay in that bar, that trap house, or locked in that behavior and just lost. Just how am I going to explain this? Not where I was or what I drank or what I used, but how am I going to explain that feeling of loneliness, of despair, of letting that person down one more time and then having to go back and make sense out of something that doesn't make sense at all. So when we talk on that level, people seem to relate, and that's what I always want to do because the person who's been sober your length of time or longer than me may not relate, but I'm there for that newcomer. I'm there for that person who's lost their sense of hope, who needs to grab onto something. Otherwise, they're going to drown. They're going to die right where they sit. And when we can give them a level of hope that we understand what they're going through in that very moment, in that very seat, then we made the connection of a lifetime.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense to me because I mean, there's so many. We have so many different things that happen to us when we're out there. So many different stories. I remember when and I had this backwards when I first came into the rooms of recovery because I was really young and a lot of stuff hadn't happened to me yet. It was kind of the early stages. I knew something was going on. I knew my drinking was different than my friends. I knew that
Yeah,
there was part of me that couldn't stop, but I just hadn't been drinking for that long, and I didn't really know what I was up against. And I would go in and I'd hear people sharing about their experiences, and if the events were different, I'm like, "Oh, no, this is I can't relate to this." But,
yeah,
when I heard people talking about the way that they felt, like you mentioned, where the loneliness and stuff like that, it's like there's only so many feelings that we can all experience, and I find that we at some point or another, we run into that same loneliness. We run into that same frustration, that pain, that hurt, that confusion of not knowing, what to do next. How am I ever gonna get sober? So, that makes a lot of sense to me, Robert, really
yeah.
identifying with the feelings.
Because is we need to relate where we can relate. If I create a difference, if I say I drank this or I drank that, or I didn't drink this or I didn't drink that, or I didn't use this or I didn't use that, people will think, well, they don't understand me because they never used crystal. They don't understand me because they never used heroin. They weren't an IV drug user, or they drank beer. They didn't drink scotch. They drank wine. They didn't drink brandy. But it's all just the same thing. It all ends up in the same place. So why not talk about how it made us feel, and why not talk about how it ended up homeless, without a job, without family, without a significant other? All the things the law is after us, where the judge can't wait to find us to violate us. The PO is looking for us because we haven't shown up in the last 2 months. All those things, it doesn't matter why they happened, it mattered that they happened. And when we can make that connection, then we're making a difference. Because once we connect with that, maybe they connect with our hope. What is Remember when the first time you thought maybe step two, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore? What if I became sane? What if I started acting sanely and normally? What if I became willing to really turn my will and my life over to the care of God, because I'm burning my life to the ground one day at a time? Those are the things that people can relate to. Once we give them a sense of hope that you can find, because I say it often, I'll say it again, and I'll say it more often. They didn't have to reinvent the program for you, nor did they have to for me. And there's a lot of time between our sobriety dates, but they didn't have to say, "Oh, Drew's here now. What are we going to do?" They applied the same principles, the same level of hope, the same security, the same path that they did for me, that they did with my sponsor, that they did for your sponsor, because we get well the same way, because we
Yeah,
got sick the same way.
yeah. Yeah, it's so cool to kinda hear it like that, and I feel like everyone when they first start out, there's things, "Oh, I wanna change this, I wanna change that," and it's like, it's working. If you don't believe it's working, it wouldn't be growing like it has if it wasn't working. There wouldn't be people getting sober all over the world if it didn't work, and when we have the same thing, we can have the same solution, I think.
I can't even imagine you as a drugged out alcoholic searching for his next drink or drug. I can't even imagine, because what you portrayed of me is this sober guy who's achieving, who's going to school, who's working full time, who's juggling a relationship, just killing it in life. I can't even imagine you being just once as hopeless as Bill. I can't even imagine that, but here you are.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I think that's when you really notice the growth, and I noticed it for me when, I would just be I forget what it was. I think I was looking at it was like my old record that I got everything expunged in drug court. I got everything dismissed, which was something that they said I'd never be able to do. And I remember one day looking at it and reading it, and I'm like, "This sounds like it is someone else." It's just so wild the change that happens. And I think we were talking about it on the last episode with Whitney, where she was talking about we were saying the same thing with her. We're like, "There's no way that Whitney was out there drinking and using like she was because she's just so put together today and
Yeah.
has so much knowledge." It's so funny. Robert, I'm gonna oh, go ahead.
Whitney is now a treatment counselor in the facility that she went through.
is she?
That's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. She now works at where she used to be treated. Go
Oh,
figure that out.
that's funny. I knew that she worked in treatment. I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was the place that she actually went to.
Yeah. She is, she's become quite the, uh, the firestorm. She is doing fantastic.
That is so cool. And what's cool about that also is like when someone's complaining there or something, it's like she just goes, "Hey, I was here. I
Yeah.
went through this
Yeah.
place, guys. I believe me, I can relate. If anyone can relate, I can
It's
relate."
me. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Let me get into. We got a couple questions here on kind of a bunch of different stuff, but they're marked as step 2 and step 3. But it says, did you make insane decisions? We touched on this a little bit, but did you make insane decisions as a result of your addictions?
You know, I did while I was practicing, while I was active in my addiction and primarily alcohol. I did drugs as a result of my alcoholism, just like I gambled away paychecks as a result. Everything surrounded my alcoholism. So I did everything alcoholically, which meant I burned my life to the ground on a regular basis. So my whole life was insane. Nothing about my life made sense. And this is a great question because this is where sponsorship, just that person that you can trust, that you gain along the way, and going to meetings really, really helps because we see people acting sanely and normally, people who are advanced with us in this plan of recovery, and we see them. The law's not after them anymore. They got a full-time job. They show up on Monday. They get a paycheck on Friday. Those kind of guys and gals, and because it had been a long time since I held the job that I didn't walk in every Monday thinking it's Wednesday or was Wednesday actually Monday and am I going to get fired the next day and those types of things or was the last dust up I had at my brother's house going to be the last time I was invited back. So a lot of those things, when I got clean and sober, I carried a lot of that insane thinking into sobriety. But step 2, once I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, once I started believing that it was possible, I started acting like it could happen. First, I believed it could, and then I started acting like it should. And so my thinking over time began to change. And I could say, Drew, within about 4 to 6 months, as the alcohol and drugs completely dissipated from my bloodstream and my body, and I didn't have a craving, there was no more withdrawals. And I I I started acting as if I was sane. I started doing what I saw other people doing, not saying what they're saying, but doing what they're doing. And sure enough, my thinking became it made more sense to me. I work 40 hours a week. I get a paycheck at the end of those 40 hours. I show up for my PO. I don't get violated. I show up at court and I don't get a warrant out for my arrest for not showing up. I act accordingly at my parents' house and I get invited back. Those things started happening one by one and little by little. I started paying my loans and they stopped repossessing my car. Those kinds of things. You have to act on what you want. So, yes, at about a 4 month, 6 month mark, 4 to 6 months, things started coming back to me because I began to do what you were doing. And as a result of that, I started to get what you were getting.
Yeah, it was very similar experience for me. I remember kind of early on just wondering, why am I doing a lot of this stuff? I can't figure it out,
Mhm.
and when am I going to feel better? But it was the same exact thing as you. I started talking to my parents about stuff and not asking them for things
Yeah.
anymore. And suddenly I was showing up to the probation officer and I was for the first time since I had been an adult, basically peeing clean. And now all of a sudden I was showing up to work and 5 out of the 5 days, the whole Monday through Friday, and
In a row?
in a row. It was insane stuff, and, I remember thinking, like, "Why don't they pay me more? I showed up 5 days in a row." Do they realize do they but it's like, I was just finally, it was the same thing you were talking about. I was doing, and you know what started to happen too around that time, Robert, is not only did I start to feel a little bit better, but I had something to compare my old addiction days to. And I realized how hard I was always making it out there for myself. Like I would
Yeah,
turn, I'd get a speeding ticket and I'd ignore it and I'd ignore it and I'd ignore it. And next thing you know, it turns into a warrant. And I would turn these small little problems that I would drink over and then I couldn't stop. And I would just create huge problems to the
yeah,
point where everything, when you were talking about the insanity, it was like everything in my life became insane. Like there wasn't anything towards the end that was actually functioning somewhat normal. So I think that's a great message. And I hope if anyone out there is listening and they're around 4 to 6 months and maybe you're struggling right now, it's going to get better. All
you
the
know,
things, go ahead.
it when we get sick and tired of being sick and tired, um, in the promises on pages 83 and 84, as you're very familiar with, it talks about promises that it says sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly. So we need to just enjoy the changes in life as they occur. And eventually, because some of us come in with a lot more baggage, some are sicker than others, right? And so some of us have a lot of legal and a lot of debt to uncover. We're buried in it. But if we work systematically at the small things, then we can put more resources toward the big things. And obviously, the first accomplishment is don't drink and use. Just show up. So if we can stay clean and sober and show up, we're so much more ahead of the game. And then we start doing that and and we stop having to look over our shoulder. We start we start telling the truth because we don't know what lie we told yesterday. So little things like that are big things to you and me, because when we can start being open and honest, oh my gosh, the world happens. And the things that we've done are bad things, but I tell you, Drew, we're not bad people trying to get better. We're sick people. We're really sick. Only sick people do what we did as a direct result of our drinking and our using and our other defects of character and the other behavior that, as a result of that drinking and using, that commands our attention. And when we can begin just stopping that, just don't drink, don't use, show up. Don't drink, don't use, show up. Wash, rinse, repeat. Just do that over and over again. And eventually certain things just stop happening. You know, I was thinking about the other day, here I am, 39 years sober, and I'm getting off the freeway. And I relayed this story to Mike on the Flagler Voice. And there was a Florida Highway Patrol or State Patrol, State Police getting behind me. And I thought, here I am. I've got a license, it's valid. I've got insurance, it's paid for. I've got a registration that's up to date. I'm carrying a loaded weapon, loaded weapons in my car. It's like, pull me over, dude. I'm clean. I'm ready to go. And here I am, 39 years sober, because I remember what that was like. Oh my God. I hope they don't light me up. I hope they don't pull me over because I'm drunk, I'm high, I'm carrying, I'm a felon with a concealed weapon and all these things. My insurance has been, my license has been revoked for 2 months. The insurance, you know, has not been valid for 6 months, and the registration is 2 months overdue. Those things, how we
Yeah.
used, how he's driving. I'm thinking, and I almost felt cheated that he didn't pull me over. Come on, dude, pull me over. I want to show you how good I am. I'm 39 years sober, and I'm thinking this. And I'm thinking, how cool is that? That I never forget where I came from and how things used to be and how things are today. And when we can take that excitement and that joy into our advanced recovery, man, we're grateful for the smallest things, and which means we can be grateful for the big things.
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm laughing because I could totally relate.
You
And
know
it
what that's
actually,
like?
yeah. Oh, I remember. I used to see a cop on like going the opposite way on the freeway, and I'd like, I'd have to like pull over and like park my car and run. My friends are like, dude, where the hell did you go? Like,
You
but
you
just paranoid. But
Yeah.
it's funny too because I remember the first time I actually got pulled over in sobriety, and I finally had all those things. I had this beater car, but it was legal and it was paid off, and my insurance was paid. And I remember the first time I got pulled over in it, and I was still on probation, so I got pulled out, and I got searched and everything. They searched me on person, they searched the car. But I remember when they let me go, and it had been a long time since I had ever been in contact with the police and been let go, like, right
Yeah.
then. And, I remember driving away, and it was like, oh, just the relief. The relief was so insane, and it was kind of those one of those moments where you just kind of realize you feel kinda connected with that higher power that everyone's
Yeah.
been talking about, and you kinda see the light for a second. You go, "This is worth it." Like, going to these meetings and not really knowing anyone yet and being kind of scared to share and paying off all these bills, which sucks because I have no money. But and then all of a sudden something like that happens. You go, oh, this is worth it. This is worth it. I can go another day doing this if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't. I was just thinking about as you were sharing that, if we tell that to a group of people in the rooms of recovery, they're thinking, "Yeah, man, I remember feeling that way. That was great." If we tell that to people who never lived their life, they're thinking, "Yeah." Like Chris Rock would say, "What do you want, a cookie?" You know,
Oh
you
yeah.
you know, you're supposed to be pulled over and come out clean and pay your child support and do all those things, you know?
Yeah.
So when we share them to people who don't understand, they're thinking, "Yeah, that's how normal people do it, baby," you know? And but when we're
Yeah.
sharing with someone who doesn't understand, who does understand, it's a totally different story.
You know what's funny too, kind of on this topic is when I was out there getting high and drinking, I got pulled over all the time. And then now, once I'm finally sober, it's like I rarely ever get pulled over anymore, which
Yeah,
is it's just
I know.
funny. It's so
I
weird.
remember the first time when I was managing the Black Angus over in Fullerton, over on Harbor and Imperial Highway. And I closed my bar down. I was, I don't know, 3, 4 years sober at the time. And there was a sobriety checkpoint on Imperial Highway. And I was going toward the 57 freeway. So, you know,
Oh, I
direction
know
I was
exactly
going
what
in,
you're talking
you
about.
know, that area. And so I'm driving up the hill there and they flagged me through. And I'm sober and I'm thinking, of all the times I want you to pull me over, it's
Yeah.
now. You know, before I would see, remember those days we'd see that checkpoint, we'd turn right around, we'll hope they didn't catch us. You know? And now that I want them to stop me, they don't. I think, what the hell's wrong with you?
Isn't that just life? That's
Yeah,
just like that is just the definition. It's so funny. It's exactly how it was for
yeah,
me though.
yeah.
Let me see what else we had on here. We had do you have any fears about coming to believe in something greater than yourself?
You know, for having lived in Utah, a high religious state in Mormonism, a lot of them would reject Mormonism and high religiosity by rejecting that premise in step three, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves, or I mean, became willing to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood it. They 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 equate that religious transformation or that opening up of the mind to the religion of their childhood, where it was they either believed and went on a mission or they were ostracized. So in highly religious backgrounds, you find that. And it's not just Mormonism, it's Catholicism, it's Judaism, it's wherever there's a high religious influence in on your life. You're expected to be or to act like. Um, as soon as, which is a prejudice, and Stephen Covey talks about prejudice as a prejudgment in in step three especially. I only ask that you're willing. I'm not asking that you believe in something or anything or even assign a name to God. We God is a very generic term in recovery, in NA, in AA, OA, HA, SA, you name the A. We just want you to be willing to turn. Now, it's obvious when we look at step one, we admitted we were powerless over fill in the blank, and that our life had become unmanageable. Well, there, there's us, and there's a higher power. Who that higher power is can be left up to question. That there is a higher power, that should be answered. Just look at the sunset, look at the sunrise, look at the moon, look at the stars, look at the tide, look at trees, look at nature as a whole. There must be something operated on a higher level that we can't see, though it doesn't mean it doesn't operate. And all we're asking is that you become willing to believe that there's something, someone out there that can transform your life. If you can't believe that, I don't know if there's any hope for you, because the only alternative is to believe in a person or to believe in self. And we all know what self, where it brought us. It brought us to the rooms of recovery. And if we believe in a person, and it's a great question, if let's say that you are my higher power, people leave by omission or commission. Either they leave voluntarily or they just leave because that's what people do. They die, they go other places. Doesn't mean anything bad, just means that people leave. Does that mean that if my higher power is a person, a place, or a thing, does that mean when that person, place, or thing leave me, that my sobriety leaves me? If it does, we're in trouble. So I have to believe in the power of the universe. Some Buddha, I don't care who it is or what it is. I just want you to believe in that it's an inside job. Now, obviously, I can't take a person and take them from the outside to the inside, but I can take the spirit of hope. I can take the spirit of forgiveness. I can take a spirit of understanding into my heart, into my soul, and I can believe on that. I don't need to know what that is. I just know that it's something out there. And I've told this story before. For the first 7 years, Drew, the higher power was what was happening with my group. It wasn't the individuals in my home group. It was what was happening to them. I could see as evidence that something was working for them. I didn't know what it was, but I wanted that higher power. I wanted what was ever operating in them. Now, obviously, there were 15, 20 guys. They all had their different idea on who this higher power was. So it could have been any one of those things, but it was something that I could believe in. If it happened to you and you believed, what could happen to me? And again, that opening of the door of hope. If it happened to you, what if it happened to me? What would my life be like if I didn't have to show up drunk? If I didn't have to show up hopeless? If I didn't have to show up penniless? If I didn't have to show up, you know, making excuses for where I was, what I was doing, who I was with? What could my life actually look like? And that's how important step 3 is to becoming willing. Honesty is step 1. Open-mindedness is step 2, and becoming willing to believe in something that I can turn my will of my life. Obviously, I can't turn my will of my life over to me. I burn my life to the ground.
Yeah, that's a great point too, and I can relate to it because I kind of would have relationships that I treated as almost like
Yeah.
a higher power. I was,
Yep.
I was always relying on something, is what it was, and what would happen is life would happen, and those things would be gone, and my sobriety was based on them. It was dependent on them, and guess what? I go right back to the drink, and kind of on what you were talking about. Just kind of understanding God or the higher power by looking at like nature or the sunset. That brought up an
Yeah.
interesting point for me because this anatomy class that I've been in, we've been learning all about the human body and stuff. And I've been telling people lately, I'm like, my concept of a higher power has strengthened since taking this class. Like seeing the intricacies of the heart and the veins and the arteries and how everything works and the skin and how it, sheds. And oh, it's been crazy, man. It's been an eye opener, so I just want to say that I could totally relate to that. Let me,
Yeah, it leaves a lot it leaves you with a lot more questions than you have answers.
yeah. And it's like, how does all this happen? Like, this
But
is,
there's an interconnection.
yeah,
Um, as I've told you before, back in Ontario, back in '88, I had this friend, and he introduced himself as Jim. He said, "My name is Jim. I'm a lucky alcoholic." He would say, "The tide goes in and the tide goes out, and I don't get drunk in between." And decades later, I was standing in Daytona Beach before Laura and I moved here, and I was standing just overlooking the ocean, and I'd seen the tide before, but not in this way. And all of a sudden, his words spoken like 30 years before, 35 years before, came to life. I finally visualized what he was saying. I believed what he was saying, but I finally saw it for myself. Wow. Just like lava, nothing can stop the tide. So no matter, you know, it says that's all we need for a start. So just believe in something that's not you, that's on a coffee cup, that's on a doorknob, and run with it and watch it grow over time.
yeah, that's, I don't know. I can relate to that as well because when I look something about the beach, man, I don't know what it is, but I'd go there and especially in early sobriety, I remember being at a sober living one time and man, my head was all over the place. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had just started in the 12-step stuff, so I was starting to heal a little bit, but I remember I'd go down to the beach and something about it, I just couldn't put my hand on it, but I would just feel better. And as you're talking about the story of just seeing you're seeing a sunset and something that you've seen before, but you were seeing it in that setting. And isn't it
Yeah.
amazing how years later, some of the things that people have said really stick with us? And
Yeah.
in my experience, I've heard people say stuff in recovery spaces that made no sense to me at the time. And then all of a sudden, years later, I
Yeah.
experienced something and it pops in my head. I'm like, that's what that
That's what
guy
they
was
meant.
talking about, you know? Oh, Robert, I got a comment here. It's from I think it's Oscar, Ozkur. It's from YouTube. I'm 81 days sober from meth. Your guys' videos have helped me a lot. One thing I keep wondering is whether the cravings ever fully go away. And then he says, right now, when the urge hits, I go for a 45-minute run or swim and it helps. But do you think it ever fully goes away?
Of course, it does. And congratulations on 81 days, Oscar. That is quite the milestone. You know, we are a people who couldn't stay clean or sober for a day. We'd pass out at 11 o'clock at night. We'd get to the end of our bag, get to the end of our bottle, and and we'd swear off forever. I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to disappoint these people. I'm never going to run out of money again. Whatever, I'm never going to look over my shoulder as I'm driving home. All the things that we say to ourselves along the way. And by 8 o'clock the next morning, we're planning our next drunk or high. And that's just the way we live. So 81 days is a lifetime. And so I want to congratulate you on that. That is a tremendous milestone. And I don't know how many days you have since you've written that, but congratulations on those days as well. And you and I have talked about it before with Whitney. There's a difference between craving and a mental obsession. Craving occurs when we're using. Once at 81 days, all those drugs, all that alcohol, whatever your DOC was, has left you. There is no more craving about it. It's a mental obsession. We romanticize that high. And that's where going to meetings, uh, working the steps, whether the NA or out of the basic textbook or the basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous, and working with the sponsor, communicating with them in knowing that things get better over time. Time is something you can't teach. I can teach you the steps. I can teach you how to stay sober, how to stay clean one day at a time. I can teach you those things. But one thing I can't teach is time. Time does what time does. Every 24-hour period, although it seems longer or shorter, the older I get, the shorter they become. And I remember early sobriety, they were long days. but
Too long.
too very long. But time does what time does. And Oscar, just give yourself time. Pretty soon you're going to be picking up the 90-day chip, and then you're going to pick up a 6-month chip. And they told me, they said, whatever set of problems you have today, in 6 months you're going to have a brand new set. And then they challenged me to say, I defy you to tell me what was bothering you today in 6 months. And so hang in there, keep coming back. It works when you work it. It says, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. So keep taking those steps and understand you're not craving, you have a mental obsession.
Yeah, and thank you for explaining that, Robert. That was something I didn't know for a long time. I had no idea, and I just want to piggyback on that real quick and say, yeah, congratulations, man, on the 81 days.
That's
And
crazy.
it is crazy, and it does get better. The comment was a little bit longer. It also touched on kind of watching videos, sometimes recovery videos, and feeling triggered sometimes. And does that ever get better? And I would just piggyback and say that it does. And that being said, though, I will say this: every once in a while, like if you put me, I'm still an alcoholic. You put me in a room, and I think too long, especially in the beginning, about for me, it was always the good times. Like my head would just lie to me, Robert. It would I would have had 14 years of just terror and pain, and my head's talking about the first year when I was
Yeah,
drinking, when it wasn't quite that bad. So, and it took me a while to really realize that I'm not making it back to that first year.
yeah.
It's just not happening. So, Oscar, thanks, man. Thank you for the comment. I've seen you comment on a couple videos, so I appreciate the support, man. I had one other comment here. It said, I don't use meth, but I use weaker stimulants and kratom or alcohol. I think it helps me in the short term, but it is harmful in the long term. Would you comment on that, Robert? What do you think about that?
You know, the only um, course that you and I should take, I'll own it. The only course that I should take is 100% abstinence all the time. One of the things that one of the speakers that I listen to says, he has been alcohol free and free from any mind altering chemicals for a long time. And in my case, it's been 39 years. What's today? Today's the 22nd. So 39 years, 6 months, and 20 27 days, a long ass time. And that continues to be my sobriety date. And I have been alcohol and mind altering chemical free. So you can't stop doing something while doing it. At some point, I need to make a break from all substances. You know, the only thing that resulted from the marijuana maintenance program is a dependency on marijuana. You know, I was talking to one of my sponsees today who's got a sponsee who has gone the hallucinogenic route. He went up to Oregon and he dropped some psilocybin, some mushrooms to find his higher power. Well, that's created a dependency. And he's going to want to re-experience that opportunity with his higher power that he found by doing mescaline. He won't be able to associate a higher power without doing that drug. So the only answer for people like you and me is to 100% abstinence sooner rather than later. Now, this person may not agree, and that's okay. Just go do you and let me know how that's working for you. You know, if and for me, if I could drink and show up tomorrow, I would drink. But it's been evidence to me that the only response that I can have toward alcohol and drugs is to be 100% abstinent 100% of the time.
Yeah, and when you're talking about the medical marijuana, man, I remember I tried so hard. I would get off the really hard drugs, and my thing was and then I would switch to the marijuana, and I just found that me personally, I will end up abusing everything. Like I took just everything. I remember I got my they called it like a weed license back in the day. It was when California was allowing you to get medical marijuana, and
Mhm.
this was years before it is what it is now, where you can get it in a bunch of different states. But I remember seeing a doctor and I got that. And my whole thing was, look, I'm going to get off the pills. I'm going to get off the meth. I'm going to get off the opiates. I'm just going to smoke weed. It never really got me in a whole lot of trouble, even though it did. But that's what I told myself. Next thing you know, I was blowing money left and right. I'm going into these weed clinics all the time. I started off smoking on the weekends. Next thing you know, I'm smoking every single day. I'm smoking at work. I'm running around work. I worked at a hospital. I was eating brownies in the elevator. Then I'm going on my lunch. I'm smoking then. And I mean, I'm eating cookies. I was like almost broke
Yeah,
smoking weed. And I didn't even wanna eat a meal without smoking weed. If we were gonna watch a
yeah.
movie, I gotta go smoke weed. Like, it started to become almost for me just as problematic as everything else, and it was funny because I realized that, later on, but not at the time, but I realized looking back that I did that with everything. I just did it with everything. It's like and I'm the same way, Robert. I tell people, "Look, if you can manage it and your life is still decent and whatever, that's cool." I just know for me, I tried it. I
Yeah.
absolutely tried it, and, I will take a substance that a lot of people can use just and not even get in trouble with, and I will get in trouble with it, basically, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, and that's the second half of step one. You know, we are powerless over alcohol, that our life had become unmanageable. There is no such thing as enough for guys like you and me and Whitney and others who profess to be hopeless alcoholics and drug addicts. There is no such thing as enough. We will drink everything that's available as long as we possibly can. We'll snort, we'll smoke, we'll shoot, we'll smoke. We'll do everything in the room if it means that we can get a little bit higher. And then we want to save some for tomorrow because we know eventually we're going to wake up. I tell people all the time. I heard a guy say one time, "My middle name is More." Everything that I did had was related to more. Eventually, if I smoke, if I drink, eventually that smoke or that drink or that drug is not going to be enough. And there's not enough crystal in the world. There's not enough cocaine on the planet. There's not enough weed in the world. You know, there's not enough of anything. Once I start going, look out, because I'm going to go through everything to get what I want, and that is to go through life sideways, to not feel. And whatever I have to do to not feel is what I'm going to do, because my middle name is More, and I don't know. I can't even spell moderation, let alone live it.
Absolutely. I'm the same exact way. I just, and that was such a hard life to live too, because even w even while I was in the middle of it, like, don't get me wrong, some of those drugs, while I'm getting high, they feel great at the time. At the time, they feel absolutely amazing, but the thing is it was so frustrating towards the end trying to chase something that I kinda describe it as something I could just never really catch. Like,
Yeah,
it was always like, "Oh, this is fun. We're all drinking. We're getting drunk, but do we have enough beer here? And I love this weed, but do I have enough?" And just and the time would always come for me. It would always eventually where the party was over and I had spent all my money and I was left with nothing but just this absolutely terrible feeling inside. And I had no purpose, I had no drive, I had no goals, I just nothing. And I remember kind of looking around and just thinking, is this ever going to get better? And fast forward to today, it's been so much easier for me to stay off everything
Yeah.
than try and switch to something else and try and control it, because it was frustrating as hell. Trying to control something for me, it sucked. It just sucked because I was never satisfied.
Yeah.
Let me see. I want to talk about. You sent me this email, Robert, as part of a blog that you did, and just for anyone listening, Robert's done a bunch of these blogs, and it says one of the questions it has for people to ask themselves is, are we willing to risk our comfort knowing what we are doing is currently not moving us forward? Can you talk about that a little bit, Robert?
Yeah. Sometimes we Stephen Zig Ziglar talks about mistaking activity for accomplishment. If we find ourselves working harder, not smarter, and no matter how hard we work, we don't seem to be going anywhere. We don't seem to be accomplishing anything. We're still stupid, boring, and glum. We're still mediocre at best. We can settle for that and say, this is my lot. I'm always going to be average or less than. Um, or we can get uncomfortable and say, you know what? I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. I need help. I need instruction. Winston Churchill said, everyone wants to learn, but no one wants to be taught. Interesting thought. Everyone wants to learn, but no one wants to be taught. So I need to be teachable. I need to get uncomfortable to become comfortable. Um, Sir Isaac Newton, back in the mid 1600s, who's a precursor to Einstein in relativity and so on, other scientific principles, said, things that are in motion tend to stay in motion. Things that are at rest tend to stay at rest. And if you want to stay at rest, if you want to go through life being mediocre, knock yourself out. I didn't sign up for being mediocre. I signed up to be as good as I possibly can be. And that's what step 10 is all about. And so take the steps, redo the steps, work with the sponsor, see what the steps are doing for other people. Because Joe and Charlie, who are teachers of the big book like no other, and you can get them at Everything AA. You can get them on the app, Android or Apple. Um, they say that steps 10, 11, and 12 are growth steps. I always want to be growing because, Drew, if I'm not growing every day incrementally, some days I grow more than other days, I'm eventually going backward because life is uphill. And I'm either trudging the road to happy destiny or I'm going backward. If I stay still long enough, I will go backward. I will attract friends who think that life right where they're at is just fine by them. I don't want to be that person. I'll hang around those people because I want to encourage them to become more. I didn't sign up for this thing to become average. I signed up for this thing and I do what we do to become great. Now we settle for whatever we're given, and that is our gratitude, but we didn't sign up to be mediocre. I signed up to be the best possible version of Robert Pardon that he can possibly be today. Tomorrow, I hope to be even greater, and I'm willing to get uncomfortable to get comfort.
Yeah, that was a great explanation, and thank you for that question. Caught my eye when I was reading through it, and makes total sense as you talk about that. And I too had to get uncomfortable. I really
Yeah.
did. There was a lot of things that a lot of things I wasn't really willing to do. I wanted sobriety. I wanted to stop getting arrested. I wanted to stop having the hangover. I wanted to stop being broke. I wanted to stop having all these problems in my life. But For a long time, I wasn't willing to get uncomfortable. I wasn't really willing to get honest with people. I wasn't willing to do things that were not easy or that I didn't feel like doing. I just I wanted what a lot of other people in recovery had, but I just wasn't quite willing to do what they were doing, and that's kind of what that reminded me of. And a question just popped up in my head as you were talking about that, Robert. And I wanted to ask you. You talked about we're either growing or we're going backwards. In all the years that you've been sober and been around, tons of people in recovery, how often have you seen people that get sober and start working a program and stuff and their life completely changes? Have you seen people that then kind of coast and you don't hear from them for a while, and next thing you know, they're right back to the drinking and using? How many times have you witnessed that?
Too many, too many. Because we hit a wall, and once again, that's where good sponsorship and good accountability come into play. I At 39 years sober, my sponsor, Slow Will, and you met him in California. I think you met him anyway.
Yeah, I did.
Um, and yeah, he was taking a chip that night. Um, he'll have 46 years in January,
Wow.
and he has a sponsor, and I have a sponsor, and my sponsees have they everything I've learned from other people. And people who don't have sponsors, who don't have a guideline, whether it's their priest or their rabbi or their cleric or whoever, it doesn't have to be a person in AA or NA, but it has to be someone that you're accountable to, who's going to stretch you and tell you things about you that you wouldn't tell yourself, and is going to say, this is what I think is going to be best for you. Go ahead and give it a try. And usually those things make me uncomfortable. If you're not willing to do that, you're settling for mediocrity. Most of those people, at some point, it causes pain. It causes dissatisfaction. It causes grief. It causes disillusionment. And as Father Martin would say, it's a natural human response to seek relief from that which is uncomfortable. Now, men like you and me and others like us, when we get uncomfortable, when we get into pain, we medicate. And medication for you and for me is a substance, whether it's alcohol or it's a controlled substance, but it's not staying in one place for very long. We're either moving forward or essentially we're moving backward.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you're talking about the medicating, man, it's so true. Once I found kind of what I thought was the magic in self-medicating, it was so hard not to do it.
Yeah.
Once I found it, it was just so hard. But Robert, we're getting towards the end here. I want to pull one more of these questions from the step 2, step 3. A lot of really cool stuff here. Again, I want to say thank you for coming on, taking the time, and hopping on. Even though Whitney couldn't come, it's all good, man. I appreciate it. Let's finish out with one more here. It says, "What evidence do you have that a higher power is working in your life?"
Wow. Where do I start?
Yeah, I know. As I'm reading that, I'm like, oh, it's a good one, but there's so many things.
You know, the greatest evidence of the life that I live and the forgiveness, I'm retired now, 71 years old. I've had an opportunity to reinvent myself over time. Drew, I have relationships with daughters I walked out on. I have going on 11 grandchildren.
Wow.
I know. I have children. Three of my children have never seen me high or drunk. I have I'm involved in a 37-year relationship, been married over 36 years, and she's my third wife. I'm an upstanding member of my community. I have people sending me credit cards just because they want me. You know, there's evidence. And you know what, Drew? Most importantly, those are all the tangible things. Most importantly, I go to bed every night and I know where I am. I wake up in the morning with the same girl in the same bed, and my car is still in the driveway, and I didn't think it was going to get towed the previous night by the loan company. There's so much evidence in my life. You know, I talked to my brother George, who's a great blessing of my life, and George and I get along really good. At one point, George is he's the only person, the only living person who's known me my whole life. My mom and dad are both passed away. My older sisters have passed away. It's George. He has known me my whole life. And there was a time where George said, if we could have done anything for you, we would have tried. The only thing we had left to do was leave. That's what my brother said at the height of my addiction, and they all left. Today, we have a great relationship. So, on every count, a spirituality, I wake up every day wondering what I can do each day for the man who's still sick, not for the man who's sick, who is still sick out there. And I go try to make a difference in the life of other people. So, on tangible, financial, spiritual, familial, everywhere you look in my life, Drew, it's worth it. I have evidence, and this is evidence that has been accumulating over the years. When I first started, as we talked about early on in recovery, beginning to see the signs that things are changing, that if I did get pulled over, I wouldn't be going to jail. I wouldn't be violated. I didn't have a warrant that was out for me. So in the beginning, things are very tangible and very real to us in our physical life. Over time, it shifts to things that really mean something to us from the inside out. So is there evidence? Oh, there's more evidence than we have time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just it's really good stuff to hear. And I think it's really inspirational for anyone that's out there that, because I remember when I first started, I just had so many things that were going on. And I look at my life today compared to where I was at, and it just trips me out.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre and weird because it's so different. But at the same time, it's just so exciting. So, Robert, thanks, man. We went over an hour, but I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for taking the time to come on. Anyone listening, I'm going to put Robert's podcast. I'll put his Instagram, his YouTube. I'll put everything on in the episode details. So make sure to check those out. Thank you, Robert.
Hey, it's been a pleasure, Drew. Nice to see you again.
All right, you made it to the end of the episode. Don't forget, we have a TikTok at The Sober Fix and Instagram at The Sober Fix Podcast. And if you want to come on the show, if you got a story to tell, I would love to have you on here. Email me, soberfixpodcast@gmail.com. Let's go another week sober, and happy holidays, guys.